Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. I have to assume most of you are from District 4, so I want to welcome all of you for being here. Thank you so much. First, I want to introduce the principal of Norma Coombs Elementary School, Principal Raymond Cross. How about a big hand for the principal? He's quite a character. I saw him going like this. More applause.
I've been ordered around all day. I just keep it going. All right. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to our school. My name is Raymond Cross. I'm principal here at Norma Coombs Elementary. I'm just here to do a welcome and say welcome to you. Welcome to our school. Some of you youngsters may remember this place as Hale Elementary many years ago. Okay? Some other people may remember it as Pasadena Alternative many years ago. Okay? But this place was christened as Norma Coombs. She was an educator here who worked here in the 80s and the early 90s, passed away at a young age in her 50s, unfortunately of cancer, but left us with a great legacy, okay? So I just want to welcome you. I'm a Pasadena person. I live on the west side of town, a different district, but I love the city. I've been an employee here for 26 years. Unfortunately, this is my last year here at Norma Coombs, but I'm staying in the district. Things happen, right? Things happen, okay? I've been tapped for a promotion, it's great. If you get time, in the back here of our stage, we have what we call the Norma Coombs Closet. If you wanna take a look, we have all kinds of supplies and resources and materials, and we established this after the fire because many of our families and our students lost their homes. And so we have items in the back that we literally get donated to the school, and then we give out to our families here. But anyway, I'm gonna say, welcome, okay, Councilmember Masuda and everyone here from District 4 and everybody else from Pasadena. I see some more dignitaries. I don't know everyone right here. I see my man, Chief Chad, in the back right there. But welcome, everyone. Have a great evening, all right? And don't be a stranger. I'll see you around town, okay? Thank you.
Mr. Cross, thank you so much for letting us use your facility here. Thank you very much. Okay, before I introduce the speakers, first of all, as you know, we went through a devastating period with the fire, the Eaton fire. So what I want to tell you and convey to you that our district was hit the worst in District 4. We lost the most homes. But I want to thank all the residents, not only from Pasadena, but from the surrounding areas. Thank you so much for your support. It's very, very important, and we'll move on. But thank you very much for helping us. Okay, some announcements. I'd like you to sign up for our newsletter if you'd like. I say this at every meeting for 14 years. And all you have to do is, we don't bother you. Let Noreen know, my field rep, Noreen Sullivan right there, and she's been with me all 14 years, by the way, and let her know by sending her an email or calling our office, and all you have to say is, put me on your newsletter list. We don't bother you, we just send it. You can read it or you don't have to read it, but we want you to have that opportunity. Please do that. And this is a good opportunity right now, since we're talking about the fire. I want to thank Noreen Sullivan. She's my field rep for all these years. The residents have always told me how wonderful it is to work with her. She makes everything so simple, even though it's a very difficult, it could be difficult topics, but she makes it easy and she does it with a smile. So Noreen, you're the best. Thank you so much for working so hard for our residents. Thank you. Okay. The Pasadena, I call it the Citizen Service Center, but we call it now the City Service Center. And there's an app and there's a phone number. When you have an issue and you have something that you want to show to staff to repair, like the streets, you see a pothole, trees needing trimming, the lights being out, use the app and make a request. There's a request button, and then they'll contact you when it'll be done. Okay. June 7th, there's a e-waste event at Brookside Park. Water and Power, they're having an open house at Victory Park on June 26th at 6 o'clock. Connect with the representatives then about the solar power, your utility bill if you have concerns, conservation, electric vehicles, and learn about other programs that they're having in Pasadena. CERT training. You know, Noreen and I, we have CERT training quite often. Often is like every few years, and we haven't had it for a few years, so we're having it now. And instead of having it in the district, it'll be sponsored by us, but we're going to be having it at Jefferson Training Center. So how many of you know where that is? Not too many. Okay. You know where Station 32 is on Villa, right? Okay, you know where that is. That's Villa. But if you go west on Villa, past Allen, you'll see on the left side a place that looks like a school. You know why? It was a school. That was Jefferson. And that's where the training center is. And so on that day, on August 23rd, that's where it's going to be. So please do that. Get prepared for any kind of an emergency. And the fire department is terrific at doing this. They've been doing it for a long time. So please, please attend. The last announcement is the American Legion Post 280, 179 North Veneto Avenue. They're accepting new and transferring members. Any veteran, spouse, son, daughter of a veteran are welcome to join. And there's breakfast on the first Sunday of every month and dinner from 5 to 6:30 every Thursday. And the last thing I want to say is thank you, media department. They're here. They're the ones that set this all up. They do a terrific job. And thank you so much for doing that. And I think the IT department is involved as well. So thank you, IT department. You can applaud for them. Sure. It's the same media department that helps us during the our council meetings as well. So just so you know the kind of work that they do. Okay, I'd like to see if there's any commissioners of District 4 that are here, and I'd like you to stand and be recognized. Okay, there's one. Howie Zeckner. And thank you so much for being here. They work so hard. They're the volunteers, and they do an outstanding job for us. They work with staff, and they give the council recommendations. Boy, I'm sure glad I'm wearing a jacket because it's really warm. Just kidding. Okay. Our speakers tonight, or this afternoon, City Manager Miguel Marquez, he's going to speak and give some updates. Then he's going to introduce our Fire Chief, Chad Augustine, and Deputy Fire Chief, Tim Sell. Then they're going to invite and introduce our Public Health Director, Emmanuel Carmona. And then Manuel, which is standing right there, sitting there, he's going to introduce our Planning Deputy Director, Jason, I'm going to mess this up, McCallion? Pretty good? Okay, good. And he's going to introduce Jason. After, we're going to stand up here, and you're going to, any questions you have, you go to the microphone and ask. We're going to be standing here, including other staff that will be here. I saw Richard Deluvio and Hai Lau from the Transportation Department. Who else will be up here? Stacy Takeguchi. Are you here, Stacy? There she is, okay. She's from Water and Power. She's the Assistant General Manager from Water and Power. Sergeant Susan Gomez, right there, from the Police Department. I think we have it pretty covered, but we'll do our best to answer your questions. When you go to the microphone, please speak right into the microphone because last year we had a hard time hearing what the questions were. So, and then after we finish up here, we'll come down after the meeting's over and answer questions one-on-one. Fair enough? And if we don't know the answers, give us your contact information and we'll get your answer for you. Fair enough? Okay, sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our city manager, Miguel Marquez. Yes, sir.
Well, hello. I'm not sure if it's good afternoon because it's still so sunny or good evening because it is almost 7 o'clock. But thank you for having me. You know, it's such a privilege to be city manager here in this beautiful city. I think a lot of what makes it beautiful is tonight, being here on a Thursday night close to 7 o'clock and got almost a full house here to talk about community issues. So thank you for being here. Thank you for making Pasadena so special. So, you know, I am your city manager, but there's a part of my job duties that normally doesn't take too much time. It's called Director of Disaster Services. So I know I have that title. I know that I have to do that. I did not realize that that would be something that would take weeks and weeks and weeks of time. And of course, that has to do with the Eaton fires that we all experienced. And I want to convey to you that probably the biggest message is to know that we were working really hard to do our level best to keep you guys as safe as possible. We were prepared. That's a really important point. You know, it was just after we had the Rose Bowl game and the Rose Bowl parade, and my staff was busy cleaning up that and getting ready. And, you know, we don't get to take that break when most people do between Christmas and New Year's, because we have a lot on our plate, but we try to take it afterwards. But we started getting, you know, information from the National Weather Service that there was a pretty big windstorm coming, and the way we were positioned, I forget what they called it, the Rocky Mountain wind shear, something like that, but just the way Pasadena is, with the mountains right north of us, that there might be really, and they use the words, devastating winds coming to hit us. And so we knew that, you know, 5-6 days out. And even though we were tired from the parade and from the game, people were on it. And we started right away, and including Public Works. We went to them and said, hey, make sure all of our equipment is ready to go in the event that something happens. Now, many, many times, you guys won't even know it, but when we get, you know, warnings about weather, we prepare. And we're ready to go, and then it doesn't materialize. That's fine. That's why we're here. Here, though, it materialized, and we had all our equipment ready. I had even activated what's called the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. And that Tuesday, January 7th, we got on a call for the EOC at 6 a.m., myself and my whole team, and we talked about the windstorm and what that would mean and how are we going to prepare to remove the trees that fell down. We knew we'd lose some trees, things like that. And that call, you know, went from 6 to 6:30, and then we got about our day. And then we meet again at 6 p.m. at night. It was supposed to be a call from 6 to 6:30 with the EOC formally opening up at 7 a.m. to be on a overnight shift in case something bad happened overnight. And right around 6:15, we all know, is when the fire started in Eaton Canyon. We were on our EOC call when somebody wrote in the chat, fire in Eaton Canyon? And our fire chief responded, yes, we've been dispatched and we're on our way. Before the call ended, I was looking at the time, 6:32. I said, we got to open the EOC at 7. I said, let's end this call. And my fire chief said, no, wait, I'm getting information. When we got that information, we immediately went into modes that we needed to go into and started to work right away to try to do our best to protect everybody. And, you know, what was amazing to me is, you know, our fire department, they're trying to put it all together and create what they call a joint unified command. And we quickly realized the scale of what was happening. So we said, we need a bigger space. And I got a call, we'd like to move to the Rose Bowl. So, I know the head of the Rose Bowl, Jens Wyden, and so I called him right away. He said, they already called me, whatever you need. So right away, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's around 4,000 people called that place home for a long time to try to fight the fires. And that became the command center for fighting the fires. And that happened without any hesitation. I think it's an important point. We love the Rose Bowl for all its activities and events, but at the end of the day, it's a city-owned municipal asset. And it's fundamentally important for issues like this. Likewise, we immediately realized we're going to have to evacuate some people, a lot of people. I don't think we knew the scale at the time. It ended up being close to 70,000 people. And where do you do that? Now, thankfully, everybody, big thanks to everybody who evacuated on their own and figured a way to stay. But of the 72,000 people or so that we evacuated, more than 1,000 needed a place to go. And we called Mike Ross, who's the head of our convention center, which again is a city-owned asset, but it's run by Mike Ross and his team. And we called him at 8 o'clock. It was barely, less than 2 hours from when the fire started. And he said he was there by 8:10 with the key and opened the door, and he said, whatever you need. It was amazing. I think I was over there 22 hours later at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, January 8th. And at the time, we had about 1,100 people already in that shelter. So that was incredible. Then we're at the EOC, and when we realized we need to find ways, we have a lot of care facilities in the path of the fire. How do we evacuate the care facilities? And somebody said, well, we have our own Pasadena Transit. Maybe the buses can help. So we asked, hey, can we use buses? And it's dangerous, it's scary. The winds, if you remember, were coming at us almost 100 miles an hour. And as I heard the story, one young bus driver with a young kid says, I'll go. And then a second one said, I'll go. And then a third one said, if one of us goes, we all go. And next thing you know, we had 11 buses shuttling people back and forth. So there was a news story about it that I want to share with you all. And so I'm going to ask if you could show a story about that night and what our Pasadena Transit operators did for us.
Being called heroes after rushing into flames of the Eaton fire to help evacuate senior citizens. And Jasmine Veal is live in Altadena at one of the senior living facilities that burned to the ground with cell phone video of what these drivers faced. Jazz?
It's pretty incredible, Juan and Pat. So this was a call for help, not to first responders, though. Imagine you had staff members here with authorities frantically trying to get out dozens of seniors from this living facility, right as it began to burn at Washington and Altadena. And that's when Pasadena Transit bus drivers, yes, bus drivers got that call. And all across Altadena, they helped evacuate 500 people.
Right down Lake Avenue. Yeah. Oh my God.
As flames closed in, a group of Pasadena bus drivers drove into the inferno last week.
Our eyes were red from all the ashes.
They were called to help rescue hundreds of people from senior living facilities across Altadena threatened by the Eaton fire.
Firefighters were helping, the nurses were helping. We're putting wheelchairs all the way down there, locking in place.
35-year-old Erasmo Rodriguez, an operations manager with Pasadena Transit, was the first to jump into a bus that night and race to Washington and Altadena, where he saw this chaotic scene as facilities burned.
We're just boarding the buses, getting as many people as we could. It didn't matter where they sat, on the ground, anywhere. Leave your walker behind, leave your wheelchair behind. Fit as many people as we can.
Pasadena Transit maintenance manager Adan Morera says he also saw the fire on the hills near his home and came back to work to help.
I told my GM how many buses they need out there to help them evacuate. We took 4 more buses. It was horrible. Going up there, just a lot of black smoke, fire embers hitting the bus, hitting us. There was a bush in front of 7-Eleven caught on fire right in front of our eyes.
He says he did his best to comfort those seniors who were confused and scared.
So right here, I had an elderly lady. She had her dog. She got out of the house so fast, she forgot the leash.
Letty Ochoa, Pasadena Transit's general manager, says she staffed 11 buses, sending them out in a caravan through the smoke.
You know, I said, you don't have to do this. And they're like, no, we want to do this. Let us do it. Like, we're on our way. So they didn't even think about it.
Risking their own lives for strangers and for those these bus drivers say they know well as regular passengers.
These guys are heroes, true heroes, because they're not trained for that. We're trained to move, you know, the city around, but not do this.
Rodriguez, though, refuses to be called that, saying he did what he had to do.
It needs to get done. Somebody needs to do it.
So many, as you can see behind me, seniors' homes that were lost, right? And sadly, Pasadena Transit tells me 2 of their employees, 2 bus drivers, also lost their homes in this fire, but none of those who were working to help evacuate so many people that night. Live here in Altadena, Jasmine Veal, KCAL News.
All right, Jasmine, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's pretty incredible. You know, we always and should recognize our amazing firefighters for what they do and our police officers who are right up there helping evacuate. But sometimes we forget that some of our own, you know, bus drivers were thrown into action and really risked their lives. I think at the end of the day, they were able to evacuate about 500 people. And then they brought them over to the evacuation center. And who was running that? Eventually, it turned out to be the Red Cross because that's what they do. But immediately, it was my parks department and other employees. They went over. We're all what we call disaster service workers, and we had to call and say, "Hey, you're needed to be a disaster service worker." And we even had one employee who, you know, showed up, left his house with the clothes on his back, and lost his home, lost everything he had. But he was at the convention center doing his work as a disaster service worker. So it was just, you know, I thought, frankly, the pandemic would be the biggest challenge of at least my professional career. And then we had this happen. And I think this was probably, in a short period of time, the biggest challenge of our professional careers. But I want you to know we were prepared, we acted, we were asked to make a lot of decisions. I'm very proud that, you know, of the, 10,000 structures or so that were lost, only about 150 were in Pasadena and the rest were in Altadena. Yet, so relatively speaking, we had less damage, but where was the evacuation center located? Pasadena. Where was the commander center located? Pasadena. When we had opened up the disaster recovery center, where was that located? In Pasadena. So we were happy, grateful to be able to provide that support. And I think it speaks volumes to the community that we are. I spent the next few weeks essentially having to ask people for help. And what was amazing is everyone I asked to, the consistent answer was yes, we will help. In fact, one of our biggest challenges was donation management, believe it or not. People were so generous, but we got all that under control. Let's see. So that's that. I'll let, other people will be available to tell you a little more on the story of what happened, and we can answer any questions you may have. The only other thing I really wanted to give you an update on is our budget. And it's not terrific news because I wish we had enough money to meet our needs, and I don't think we do. We unfortunately, like every other government entity in California, we receive revenues based on formulas, whether it's formula for property tax or formula for sales tax, not based on our needs. So we have to condense our needs to meet what we have. But I'm pleased to say that the council has been terrific over the years, and so our reserves are fully funded. I think that's a really good start and an important start. I look at all levels of government. I look at the federal government and what's happening there, and they, of course, are cutting for different reasons because they're the only ones who can print money, but there's a different dynamic going on, and they're cutting a lot. And then I look the impact at our state and what's happening with the stock market and whatnot. The governor's revised May budget came out, and they had to trim $12 billion statewide in their budget. So, that's going to have impacts on us and everybody else. I look at the county of Los Angeles. They, too, are in tight fiscal times and are doing some cuts and some freezes and things like that. I look at our neighbor, Los Angeles. They have $1 billion shortfall, and they're looking at layoffs and hiring freezes and whatnot. And I look even here in our own boundaries, Pasadena Unified, they're also doing layoffs. So it's tough times. So when I look at us, we are not doing hiring freezes, we are not doing layoffs. We are going to be able to live within our means. Now, we have needs that I would love to allocate more resources toward, but the money's just not there. But the good news is, you know, everybody, we have about 2,100 people on city staff. None of them feel threatened that they're going to lose their jobs because of the budget. I think that's a really important. It actually has morale up because they're thankful that we don't have to go through that awful feeling of who's going to be laid off. So though the budget is not, you know, flush with money to get a bunch of stuff done we'd like to do, at least we're not in a place of cuts and layoffs. So I wanted to make sure that that was reported out to you. So I'm going to be here throughout the presentations. And I'll be here to answer questions up here, and then afterwards, one-on-one, happy to answer any of your questions. But for now, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who will be our Fire Chief, Chad Augustine, and our Deputy Fire Chief, Tim Sell. Thank you so much.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight and taking time out of your day to come and allow us to share some really important information. Again, for those of you I have not met, my name is Chad Augustine, and I have the privilege of being your Pasadena Fire Chief. And with me tonight, I have Deputy Chief Tim Sell. He's also our Fire Marshal. I want to start by thanking Councilmember Masuda and Noreen for allowing us the opportunity to provide an update on all things Pasadena Fire. And if we could just give them one more round of applause, they just do great work. I started my speech of just acknowledging that 2025 has been a really tough year for all of us. The Eden fire was incredibly devastating, and most important, it was devastating not just to our community, but most of the devastation was in District 4. We barely took a breath and had to transition to protecting our community from mud and debris flow. And again, most of the areas that were threatened were in District 4. During 4 different storms this year, post-Eden fire, I requested from the state and Cal OES to have state urban search and rescue teams pre-positioned in your backyards so that when the rains came and we had mud and debris flow coming down your hills, we really didn't have the reps yet to know how devastating it could be. And thankfully, we had minimal mud and debris flow, but I want you to know that we had almost double the normal staffing that we would have on duty each day, so that we would be prepared in case there was a large event. I also just want to highlight that despite the tragedy, I witnessed some of the most amazing acts of kindness and generosity that I've ever seen in my life. As City Manager Marquez noted with some of the donations, it was humbling and overwhelming, the community support and generosity that we saw. So I just want to take a moment to thank each of you for your support for us, but most importantly to our community over the past few months. While there's still a tremendous amount of work to be done, I'm confident that we can accomplish any challenge when we come together as one community. On June 9th, your city leadership will be providing a full debrief of the Eden fire. There'll be numerous city staff presenting at City Council. I urge you either to tune in on TV or to come in person, and you'll hear from 4 or 5 different city departments all the various efforts that were done, both leading up to and post-Eden fire. Next, I want to just, between Chief Sell and myself, highlight some of the many efforts that are going on with your Pasadena fire. So a little background, about 4.5 years when I came here when I arrived in Pasadena, we had a tremendous number of vacancies. We had force hires on a daily basis, and we just weren't having regular fire recruit academies to keep up with attrition. And thank you to City Manager Marquez, Councilmember Masuda, and all of council. We now have funding for regular annual fire recruit academies. And the hiring process for us is very similar to the police department. From the start of saying we want to put on an academy through the recruitment, hiring, background, and the academy is about anywhere from a 15 to 18-month process. And so if we're not in front of that planning every year, we can quickly get behind on our staffing. So we recently graduated 7 recruits, both between firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics. And then again, we just already last week interviewed almost 400 applicants out of the 1,200 that applied for Pasadena Fire. So we're sending 85 additional recruits, 85 recruits that scored 100. And so we're gonna have some applicants who got a perfect score on their interview process not get a job with us, but that's a good problem to have. We're also interviewing for our one vacant fire inspector position, and I want to just highlight our Fire Prevention Bureau. Again, when I arrived here, we're mandated by the state of California to do annual fire inspections. We call them state mandated inspections. Apartments, hotels, motels, any place where somebody might be sleeping. And this is post the Ghost Ship fire, if you remember that, in San Francisco, where 36 people lost their lives. And so our compliance 4 years ago was 28% on our inspections for those state mandated. Obviously not good. We'll be reporting out to council next week, and our compliance is increased to 98% compliance. And so again, that's just one small step of a larger effort from your public safety and citywide for us to make sure that our community is protected. We also have an innovative paramedic trainee program. Fire departments all over the Western United States are trying to address how do we hire paramedics. There's a paramedic shortage. We want to make sure that we continue to provide paramedic level service on our ambulances, our fire engines, and our ladder trucks. But out of those 1,200 applicants, we had about 30 paramedics. They're just not there, and they're usually testing for 4 or 5 different departments. And so, again, with the thanks of City Manager Marquez and our council, we have a paramedic intern program, and we hire employees. They meet all of our requirements for fire recruit. We put them through paramedic school. They work for us 20 hours a week, gaining essential knowledge, skills, and abilities, riding third person on an ambulance, helping to hone their craft. And then when they graduate, we put them into our academy. And that's our way of home growing some of our future paramedics. We also just completed a women's empowerment camp, and this was our first ever joint women's empowerment camp that was a partnership with Glendale Fire. So the national average right now on females in the fire service is about 3.9%, which is unacceptable. Pasadena Fire, we're doing much better, but I'm embarrassed to tell you we're only around 7%, which is still unacceptable. And so the goal is at the junior high level, the high school level, to get young ladies interested in the fire service, to allow them to recognize that this is a profession that they not only can they do, but they can do really well. And so our women's empowerment camp is one small way that we're getting females interested in the fire service, and it's a 2-day camp. And then we just completed our annual fire service day, in which we get to show all the different things that Pasadena Fire does. We do sidewalk or hands-only CPR. We do auto extrication. We show the various skills that we do, some of our equipment, and really it's just a way for us to engage and interact with our community. And so be on the lookout again for that next late spring next year. And then also I want to highlight, we are gearing up for another busy summer of special events. Did you know that your Pasadena Police Department and Fire Department work together to provide public safety on any large-scale event at the Rose Bowl? And so as we're looking next month, 6 FIFA Club World Cup events in 10 days, that's just a small number of the almost 30 events we're doing each year. And we will almost double our daily staffing of 53 for an event at the Rose Bowl, just to make sure that all of the spectators and fans in our community come there, they have a great time, but they also go home safely and in just as good a shape as when they arrived. So I want to do a quick highlight on our fire hazard severity zone maps. The state fire marshal is tasked with updating the fire hazard severity zone maps. And the last update has been almost 20 years. And so this year, the fire marshal has been over the course of the last few months, pushing out the updated maps. He started in Northern California, then Central California, and now Southern California. Cities and jurisdictions really, we don't have any say at all or input in those maps. And we have 30 days to post them for public comment and 120 days to adopt them. And so what's that mean to you as District 4? Well, District 4 has a fair amount of homes that are in the high fire hazard severity zone. And so we will walk each of those. Now, we're going to go from 4,000 to about 4,700 homes. We'll walk each of those properties annually with you. And our whole goal is just to partner with you to make sure your home is hardened and as safe as possible to prevent it from having a fire if a brush fire comes through. Lots of questions and information on that. Go to Pasadena's website if you have any additional questions. And then we'll be posting when we're going to go to City Council on that, and we'll have good conversation at public comment there. Couple last things that I want to highlight. We just talked about the brush inspections. About 2 weeks ago, we went to City Council and increased our fines and ordinance on our fireworks. Fireworks are a large problem in Pasadena and in almost every city in California. And post-Eaton fire, we should have no fireworks. But the fines and citations, in some instances, we quadrupled or even more and made them from an infraction to a misdemeanor. And so we can easily take a fine up to $1,000 for somebody who's in possession of multiple different fireworks. And our whole goal is prevention. Our team had a small part in that task force that just seized 100,000 pounds of fireworks. And that task force goes all over Southern California, across county lines, down to the state line. Again, we recognize if we keep fireworks out of Southern California, we have an increased likelihood of keeping them out of Pasadena also. And that's it for the fire department update. Chief Sell will be here for the Q&A portion. Is there any, I know I'm going to introduce the next speaker, but is there any single question for me before the Q&A portion that I can answer? I'm sorry? Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the reminder. So Pasadena Fire has an EMS subscription program. And really, for our whole goal is that somebody will never not call 911 out of a fear of not being able to pay their ambulance bill. So when we look, Pasadena Fire has transporting ambulances. We believe that we provide the highest level of service in the community. And rather than contracting with a private for-profit ambulance company, Pasadena Fire provides the ambulance transports. That's not something that would be covered in your normal tax bill, right? Like our fire protection is, public service is, but ambulance transport is not. And so for $85 a year, that is our EMS subscription program. So anything that your insurance does not cover is automatically waived. And so for our residents who are on a fixed income, it gives them peace of mind that they won't have an unexpected ambulance bill. Okay. Thank you for that reminder on that. Again, there's any information on that program is on our website. Thank you so much. Okay. And next, I get the privilege of introducing my friend, Public Health Director Manuel Carmona.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Manuel Carmona, Director of Public Health. I always get the great honor and privilege of following fire department, but I got to say, they're always a tough act to follow. I want to thank Councilmember Gene Masuda for the invite to share a little bit of information with you all. Let's see if I can move this a little bit closer. I'm a little bit taller than the previous speakers, as you can see. As you all probably are aware, there's a lot of concerns about the environmental impacts of the wildfire. And so I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about ways that we can reduce potential exposure to lead in particular, but it's really true for anything that might be born in our soil. So I want to start with who's at risk, because that's really important. When we talk about who is the most at risk for lead poisoning, we're really talking about children and pregnant women. And of course, there's a lot of ways that people get exposed to lead, but there's only 3 ways that it can actually get into our body. So the first is ingestion, second is through inhalation, and then finally the last is through prolonged contact with skin. And you can see why this is important for kids, because kids, if they're crawling on the floor, they have a higher propensity of putting things in their mouth. That's the way that lead will enter their body. It can take several weeks or months for lead to actually accumulate in the body. It's not a one-time exposure and then someone's poisoned. Usually lead takes anywhere up to 6 months in order for it to get to the levels where it can have adverse impacts. Nonetheless, we want to make sure that children and all members of our community are protected, and that's why it's so important to focus on reducing potential exposure. Now, as I mentioned, the most important group here is children under 6, because of course they're crawling on the ground. We have some kids that like to actually eat dirt. It's called pica. So we want to avoid all of those types of behaviors. We know that, I'll talk about, that basically lead is available or prevalent in our community in a lot of ways, but the most important thing is really prevention. And so when we can focus on really preventing kids and others from being exposed, the next thing that we can do is really look about identification and making sure that people who have been identified or exposed to lead, that they're identifying it as early as possible. So with kids and with others, that means blood lead level testing. So we'll talk a little bit more about ways that you can do that. But there is no safe level of lead in children's blood. And I think that statement gets shortened a lot to there is no safe level of lead. And it's really important to know that lead is actually in our community. It's prevalent here because of course, we used leaded gasoline for a long time. We used lead-based paint. And so there's no way to really eliminate from the community. But what we really want to do is make sure that it's not getting into the bodies of children. The reference for lead in blood is 3.5 micrograms per deciliter. So that just means that that's the level at which we know that it has an impact on people's bodies, and we want to make sure that any exposure is below that. So as I mentioned, it can be lead is available not only in our soil but also air and water. And I'm sorry, my notes here are a little mixed up. So most lead comes from human activity, as I mentioned, in leaded gasoline or through paint. But it can also be found in things like ceramic ware, and even some candies and other spices from foreign countries in particular, where lead is prevalent, can actually be sold in the United States. So it's really important to know where you're getting these different materials so you can avoid exposure to lead in your household. So we hear a lot about screening levels, and I think that screening levels, it's important to define that and talk a little bit about it, because it's not toxicity levels. And when we hear about screening levels, it's easy to interpret that as being the level at which we have to avoid, but really it's just an indication that additional evaluation of that particular property is needed. Screening level in California is 80 parts per million. That's a lot more conservative than the federal level. US EPA screening level is at 200 parts per million. And that's a big difference, but it's important to note that the state is really just taking a very ultra conservative approach to protecting our communities. As you can see, the EPA threshold for screening level in soil is actually much higher at 1,200 parts per million when there's no children around. So those are really big differences, and it's really important to assess the potential exposure based upon what we see in the soil on your property. Now, these screening thresholds are defined by what could be the levels at which we think that they'll impact or create negative health effects in children. And there's actually a study that indicates this lower level of exposure at 80 parts per million over the course of a year, if a child was exposed to that soil, that it would have no impact on their health, which is really important. But above that, of course, it means that we need to do additional testing to make sure that the levels are not above that. So when it comes to additional evaluation, what that means is, additional testing. So if we did, for example, pulled a sample and we found something that tested at above 80 parts per million, then we would go back and we would want to test a couple of feet out, 2 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, and understand if there's a bigger problem on that particular location, and then make appropriate remediation or mitigation measures as needed. So in those situations where we detect higher levels of lead, the mitigation is different from remediation. Mitigation just means that we can cover that particular area of soil with usually some type of ground cover. And it could be mulch or wood chips, gravel, or even just planting grass. Because what that's going to do is reduce the potential for that lead-borne dust to actually become suspended in the air and for children or others to inhale it. Now, remediation is a little bit different. It means that we're actually going to remove that soil and then put new soil on top of it so we can either dilute it or completely replace it. And so it's going to really depend on the level of toxicity of the soil that we've tested. Now, that's for areas where there's children and pregnant women in the household. When it comes to other adults or people who are not in vulnerable population, we call it a risk-based assessment. And what that means is all of us, of course, during this time after the wildfire, we really want to get back to normal as quickly as we can. But we also, with that comes a mentality that we can assess things as safe or unsafe. And unfortunately, that's just a faulty way of looking at the situation. Instead, we need to start looking at things as being less safe and more safe, and start looking at signs what would indicate where it's less safe, what precautions are needed in order to protect ourselves and our family. So I have a couple of studies, and I'm not going to get too technical. I want to keep it really light, but I do want you to understand this is a study produced by Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, and it's an organization that they contracted with called RU, and they do environmental testing. And as you can see, this is a map of the burn zone, including Altadena and Pasadena. And what you'll see is that the darker colors in this map indicate areas of the city or areas of the community where they had higher percentages of residential properties that exceeded the screening level. So the darker the color, the higher percentage of samples exceeded the screening level. I want to zero in on this section here because this is where we get into Pasadena, and it's F5 through F4 and then G5. And you can see, it's kind of hard to see on this map actually, when you do the overlay in the satellite image, there's a darker green in first 4 boxes, and that is actually the parts that are inside of Pasadena. And F4, you can see the lighter green, that's actually still the county. And the reason why I highlight this is because this is the area that we took a look at, and we wanted to make sure that any schools, parks, youth sports facilities, and early childhood education centers within these zones had additional testing so we could understand if there was any concerns of lead on their properties. At the end of the day, the city ended up testing 2 parks within those zones and then 4 additional parks for lead and other heavy metals. And we're pleased to say that at all of the 6 parks, there were no lead detections that exceeded the screening threshold. In fact, they were well below the screening threshold. The highest was 52.9 parts per million, well below the 80 parts per million, and that was at Washington Park. So we're confident when we reopened all of the parks and they're now open for public use. I do want to note that there have been several other studies about soil and lead, And in this particular study, this is from USC, the clean soil. You can see that in this chart, the darker the color, the higher the lead detections. But you can see where the burn zone is, and then you work your way south. There's no consistency here. As you look at these results, you can see that there's no tie to proximity. And in many cases, you can have properties right next to each other, and they'll have different test results. And that's obviously very challenging for us who are trying to interpret the data so we can provide guidance. But at the end of the day, we're looking at all this data, trying to figure out what can we do to make sure that people are informed. But I share this data because it's important to note that the variability between the test results could indicate something else, right? That some of this lead may have been present in our community even before the wildfire, and that only now are we discovering it because, of course, we're looking for it. And that, of course, is a concern for our community. It doesn't matter if the lead is due to the wildfire or some other reason. We still want to be able to provide the guidance, and for those that need to, we can make sure that their properties they're doing everything they can to protect themselves and their properties. So as I mentioned, we started off, one final slide. This is actually a slide from Allied County. It has, there's over 24 studies that are being conducted, and I just wanted to highlight this, and hopefully you all get the link here. If you're interested in learning more about not just soil, but air and water, the results from all those studies are being posted on this website. So all of this to say, what does this mean for Council District 4 in your neighborhood? The most important thing is following standard precautions and really taking that risk-based approach that I talked about. And that just means understanding who's in your household. If there's anybody that's vulnerable to lead poisoning, obviously you want to be more cautious. But for all of us, what we've known through Caltech studies now is that general cleaning in indoor environments in your home, just wiping down your hard surfaces and wet mopping your floors has been shown to remove 90% of potential contaminants, including lead. So general cleaning is effective. We also now are looking at and recommending that if you can, removing your shoes before entering your homes could be a good way from preventing traipsing in some of that dirt or potential contaminants in your home. And then if you're gardening or playing outdoors, anything that might come in contact with soil, washing your hands when you come back indoors after the outdoor activity is completed, that's going to make sure that you're obviously not putting anything on your food or other materials inside your house and protecting you and your family. So results from other properties are really not a good indicator of what might be on your property. So I know that there's a lot of folks in our community that are looking for any sign to indicate whether or not their property is safe or if there's concern. So again, it's important for you to do that risk-based assessment for yourself and see what might make the most sense for you and your family. So what does that mean for Council District 4 in your neighborhood? Really, if elevated levels are detected, there's a lot of questions to consider. And the first is, what do you believe the source of the lead to be? Could it be the wildfire? Could it be your home is older than 1978 where lead-based paint might have been used? Could it be that you're next to a commercial industry like a dry cleaner or something in your neighborhood? All of those things might contribute to lead on your property. Also, if you do detect lead, are there children on the property, or is there pregnant women that are on our property that will be playing in the yard, or they will possibly kicking up any kind of dust if they're out on any bare soil that's where lead has been detected at higher levels? And then finally, can the area be covered relatively easily? Is it as simple as putting down some mulch or some grass, or is there more sophisticated measures of remediation that are going to be needed on your property? In that situation, I do recommend consulting with a professional environmental consultant to provide you guidance instead of trying to figure it out on your own. If you have children in the home and you have exceedances at higher levels, we have several programs at the Pasadena Public Health Department that can be of assistance. Primarily our childhood lead poisoning prevention program, where they can provide guidance and also help to do an assessment of your property, as well as provide guidance and treatment for your child. Now, again, whether due to pre-existing conditions or due to the wildfire, any confirmed elevated lead results in soil require precautions, and we do recommend that you take appropriate measures to protect you and your family. In closing, I wanted to leave with a couple of resources. So the first is that LA County is offering free blood lead testing. They're offering it through Quest Lab Diagnostics. It's free. You can call them, set up an appointment at your convenience, and you get the results relatively quickly in about 3 to 4 days. Also, if you have insurance, most people do nowadays, but there still is a segment of our population that don't. You can visit your medical provider and request a blood lead test there, and testing is covered by most insurance plans, especially Medi-Cal, so that to note. And then finally, in terms of our Pasadena Public Health Department Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program, it's known as CLIP. Here's the contact information. My team is composed of public health nurses as well as environmental health specialists that can do on-site assessments as well as oversee case management and treatment for anybody in your household if there's elevated blood lead levels. So I know this is a lot of information in a very short period of time. I appreciate you sticking with me while I reviewed all of that. And at this point in time, I want to introduce the Deputy Director for Planning and Community Development, Jason McCallion.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Jason. I'm with the Planning and Community Development Department. And what I wanted to do was share some information on some of the projects going on in the District 4 area, as well as some of the work that's been going on with the fire recovery as well. So just to kind of update on a couple of big projects, there's obviously a lot of different projects going on throughout the city. East Pasadena is another hub of that activity as well. The largest amount of projects are still in the Central District area, followed by like the South Fair Oaks area, but there is still a sizable number of projects in East Pasadena as well. And one of them is the Panda Inn project. The restaurant itself was beautifully remodeled and opened several months ago, so that portion of it is complete. As is the bulk of the parking structure as well. But that project also includes a residential component of over 200 units. So that right now is going through where the city is reviewing the construction drawings. So that's the step that it's at right now. And once those drawings are approved, then they would be able to move forward with construction. The other project is the Rusnak Porsche project. This is located on the northeast of Colorado and Sunny Slope, and also extends up to Walnut. So it's 3 street frontages. This project was approved by the city. The city council just approved the art component of it. So at this point, they're able to submit for construction drawings to be reviewed. As soon as that's done, then we'll review those for them to begin construction. The project includes keeping the Pedersen building, which is the red brick building, which is right across from the Home Depot. So that building will be maintained. They're going to renovate it. And then there'll be a new, the rest of the buildings on the property would be demolished. And the portion of Nina Street, which is kind of dead ends there, that street would be removed and incorporated as part of the project. And then they would be constructing a 60,000 square foot building that would kind of wrap around the brick building. And then there would be a sculpture component along Colorado Boulevard. And so the upper photograph is how it looks now, and then the lower photograph is the newer building with the sculpture along the street. You can't see the red brick building, but that's along in the farther part of the picture. Another project is a smaller project, but it's going to really change that portion of Walnut Street. I'm sorry, Foothill Boulevard. This is Foothill Boulevard on the northern part of the street. It is northwest of Foothill and Daisy, and it does not include the Starbucks, but it will include everything east of the Starbucks to the street corner. And this also just received approvals for the design by the city. And so at this point, then they would be able to submit their plans for their construction drawings to be reviewed. This project is for about 5,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space, and then 21 residential units above it. So it has a kind of a Spanish facade, but it also incorporates more modern elements that when the design commission looked at it, they wanted to make sure that it kind of incorporated some of the industrial feel that's to the south. So And then the other thing, this is not an actual specific project, but it's a planning document. So this is for the Lamanda Park area. So the city is divided up into, the city's commercial areas primarily are divided up into what we call specific plan areas. Each of these plan areas basically look at, what are the mix of uses, how tall the buildings can be, what type of residential development can go there, as well as design standards and stuff like that. And so District 4 includes 2 specific plan areas, the Lamanda Park area, which is bounded roughly by the 210 freeway to the north, Kinaloa to the east, Colorado to the south, and then Roosevelt to the west. This plan area was just approved by the City Council beginning of the year. And so, we have 2 renderings here where we do kind of like conceptual drawings. They're not really of any specific projects, but it would be like if if someone were to follow the standards, what would that, area of the city look like? So it really can be divided up into maybe 3 kind of areas or subzones, so to say. So you have Colorado Boulevard, which is more of a, Route 66, maybe for more intensity at the corner where the Vons is, for example. So the picture at the front shows the intersection of Colorado and Sierra Madre. And so you see a taller building at the corner over there. That would introduce more housing in that area. The area along Walnut would be, or would kind of continue to be kind of like an incubator space, creative space, flexible space, the work-live space. So the picture on the bottom is showing Walnut Street. And then the area along Walnut would be more, lower scale, neighborhood serving, more compatible with like the single family residential neighborhoods around it. So that's been just adopted. It's actually the first specific plan for the Lamanda Park area. In the past, Lamanda Park was split up into other specific plans. And so one of the things that the City Council wanted to do, because it is a very distinct area, it has a very rich history, and so they wanted to make sure that it had its own specific plan and its own focus, so it continued to kind of function as its own identity. The other specific plan that covers District 4 areas, East Pasadena. So that we will begin work on that towards the end of the year. And that area really includes Foothill and Colorado east of Kinaloa, and then going into the city boundary ends. So that's going to be, there's going to be a lot of meetings involved in that, a lot of public outreach. We'll be sending out notifications as well. I'll be working closely with Noreen to make sure that we get the word out to the businesses in that area, property owners in that area, as well as the residents especially those that live in close proximity to those areas as well. So we will be having a lot of preliminary meetings on it, and then eventually it would go to the City Council. So this is the first time that plan will be updated in over 20 years. The last time it was updated was before the metro station. It was even in operation. So it's definitely time to update that plan and to plan, for the future of that area. This is just kind of a summary of other projects that are going on in the area as well. We have the affordable housing project. This one's under construction. It's near the metro or across the street from the metro parking structure. So it's on Halstead. It's the 6-story building. That's an affordable housing project, 48 units. It's almost complete. The other one is the Cadillac Pasadena. They are also under construction. They're doing a renovation, a very significant renovation of their property. The other is the medical office building. This is on Foothill Boulevard and I believe Altadena. So this is under construction as well. This is a 2-story, almost 8,000 square foot medical building. And the other is the Ferrari dealership. This is going to be located where the Progressive Insurance building was. This is along Foothill Boulevard, kind of west of the Toyota dealership. So where there was the Progressive location, that is going to be a Ferrari dealership. So they're going to maintain the existing building, do a significant renovation, and it'll be a Ferrari vehicle dealership. The other is there's commercial nurseries that received approvals. One is on Orange Grove Boulevard, one is on Sierra Madre Boulevard. So they're able to move forward and establish them. So we're waiting for them to submit the paperwork to do that. And the other one is the Space Bank site. This, of course, has a very long history. There was a project and a mini zone, or what we call like a planned development, that was approved in 2018. That project went through various iterations. There's kind of two pieces to the project. One is the zoning piece. So the zoning piece, they have kept that active, and they have extended it. And the current zoning piece that was approved in 2018 is not set to expire until 2026. The other piece of it, though, which is the design of the specific buildings, the approvals for that have expired. So I know that the property owner was looking to sell the property to new owners. We haven't received any information since that announcement was made. So that property is, kind of more of a question mark at this point, as far as, is it going to move forward, as it was proposed and approved, or is something else going to move forward? But of course, as soon as we have more information, I'll continue to work with Noreen on making sure that the community is informed on that as well. And then I did already talk about the East Pasadena specific plan, which again, we're going to kick that off probably at the end of this year or the beginning of 2026. For the fire recovery, as was mentioned previously, District 4 was by far the most heavily hit in the city as far as devastation. There were a total of 187 structures in the city that were destroyed. Of those, 112 were single-family houses. 3 of them were accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. There were also a couple of multifamily structures, and a couple of commercial buildings, and then 28 structures damaged. Again, most of the damage, there was over 80 of the single-family homes were in the Upper Hastings Ranch area. The other area that was also heavily hit was the area, the Victory Park neighborhood, the area behind St. Luke's Hospital. That's where there was also some multifamily and some commercial structures that were destroyed. And then also in District 1, which is the Natha area and Dundee Heights area, also had some homes that were destroyed there as well. And then as far as the debris removal, which really the first big phase was to remove the debris, because, there was little that people could do while the debris was still there. So there was a huge effort made to work with the property owners and work with the community to get the paperwork submitted to the federal government so that FEMA could remove the debris. And the paperwork that was filled out was the ROE forms, or the right of entry forms. Because the area was declared a national disaster zone, and then FEMA was then responsible to remove the debris, or at least be available to remove the debris. That was divided into 2 phases. So the first phase really looked at removing the hazardous materials, and that was done by the Environmental Protection Department through the federal government. In that case, they didn't need any approvals or signatures from property owners. They were able to enter the properties, remove the hazardous materials, and then leave the properties. However, for the rest of the debris, FEMA needed to have authorization from the property owner. And so we did get almost 100% compliance. There were some people who did just prefer to remove the debris themselves, which we create a process for them to do that. But 125 individual property owners submitted the paperwork and received the approvals from FEMA. And of those, to date, 118 have been removed. I know I was driving through Upper Hastings, and almost all the debris is removed in that area. I know when I was there, they were working on a couple of homes along Hastings Heights Lane. The area near St. Luke's Hospital still had a lot of removal that needed to get done. But they are moving really quickly on that process. I know when the fires had first happened, what we were initially told was it would take 6 months to do the hazardous materials removal, and then another 1.5 years to get the debris removed. So that's a total of 2 years. And so the hazardous materials was removed in 6 weeks. And the debris removal, as you can see, the majority of it's already been removed. So they had estimated initially, once they did the expedited time frame, that it would be done within 1 year. But I think it's going to be done well less than that. Probably this fall is what people are discussing, where all the debris would be removed. And I know that is something there was, because the thing that was extra challenging, I think, in Pasadena is in Altadena, you had block after block where everything was destroyed. So in a sense, it's pretty straightforward. You move the debris. No one's living there. It's pretty straightforward. In Pasadena, though, you would have 3 homes that were destroyed, and then 5 homes that were standing, and then 2 houses that were destroyed, and 3 houses that were standing. So it was a lot trickier. You had still a functioning, once utilities were brought back on, you would have a functioning neighborhood, but all this in the midst of all this debris. So it was extra challenging, and I know it really involved, a lot of patience with the community to, get the information out as far as, how this is going to work, what is the process going to be, and so forth. So I know that really took a lot of effort, really on everyone's part, to really just be patient to get through the process and work with us. And as the city manager had said, this disaster was really unprecedented, and I was looking around at staff and I was going back to all the previous disasters, and there haven't really been any. The last fire to hit this area was the Kinaloa fire, which was in 1993. And that entire fire only destroyed about 200 structures. This fire destroyed over 10,000. And I remember in 93, that was huge. That was national news. And that was a big, big deal. And a lot of homes were lost in the Kinaloa area, mostly in Altadena, unincorporated areas. But then when you compare it to this, it was just where it was just unbelievable to even to wrap your arms around. So the other piece that we've been working on then is really the second phase. Of course, there's a lot of overlap between these two, but it's the rebuild phase. So one of the first things that we did really right away was put together policies, review our codes. The governor had put together a lot of executive orders as well. So this was all to speed up the process to, get the rebuild underway. And so the governor had approved several executive orders to provide flexibility for people to rebuild. And then the city council then we approved our own rebuild ordinance that basically provided additional flexibility on top of that. And so in the shortest form, if someone had their house destroyed, that they would be able to rebuild it. Everyone's, the like for like or as is, but they would be able to still do some additions to it. It'd be 10% or 200 square feet, whichever is greater. And also they could increase the height as well. And also we said that, you could, if you want to put in a different area on a property, you can do that. Obviously, if you want to redesign the interior of the house, you can do that. So we want to provide as much flexibility as possible for that. We also had specific staff assigned so that every single person that had a structure destroyed had a specific designated planner and another staff person to help them through the process. And working with Noreen and also the field rep for District 1 as well, we want to make sure that we reached out to every person individually and to make sure that, what they needed and so forth. And I know people who had experienced the devastation, they were kind of going through different phases as well. So it was an ongoing conversation and an ongoing discussion. Some people right away were not ready to talk about it, or we're dealing with immediate needs, and our response was, of course. But when you are ready, we are here for you. So that really was the message we want to make sure that we gave everyone. And the other thing is we've been partnering with Los Angeles County in doing a standard plans program. And so we do have a website set up for that, so that if people want to pick from a catalog to have like a already designed house that has had some level of building plan check review, that they would be able to do that as well. And that would, of course, reduce a lot of costs associated with rebuilding. And we have also been holding a series of workshops for the fire victims, both partnering with LA County. We've been doing a series of Saturday workshops, as well as workshops with people within Pasadena specifically. Our next workshop is going to be on June 11th. Yes, June 11th. We did 3 workshops so far, and they're kind of in part of a series. So the first one really focused on the debris removal phase. The second one talked about the rebuild ordinance and a general overview of what that rebuild process would be. And now this third workshop is going to do a deep dive in the plans that are needed, the construction drawings that are needed. Also, if people are struggling to find an architect or to hire a design professional, we're going to have someone speak from the American Institute of Architects and do a presentation as far as what to look for when hiring a designer and so forth as well. So those are kind of the things that we've been doing for the rebuild portion. And then right now we have 11 people that have submitted their construction drawings already. 2 of them are ready to be approved. Those 2 properties, they are waiting to have their debris removed, so we can't issue it until the debris is removed, but as soon as the debris is removed, then they'll be able to be issued. And I know there's a couple others of the 11 that are pretty close to getting approved as well. And we really expect over the next month and the next 2 months for that number to just skyrocket as well, which is great. We have staffing resources in place to do the plan check review. We're committed to expedited timeframes to do the reviewing of the plans and also to do inspections once they start construction as well. And so that concludes my presentation. And I think the next phase, we're going to do the Q&A. So I think everyone's invited to come back up to the stage.
Thank you all for your presentation. And my question is actually regarding public safety. And I just wanted to start by saying that the chief of police recently said that he will be installing a number of license plate cameras in District 4, and that was without community input in advance or consent. And one of the locations for this license plate readers is going to be at the Altadena Sierra Madre intersection, which has no homes or businesses. And so the question really is, what is the justification, the rationale in terms of public safety or related criminal activity that justifies the installation of these license plate cameras in District 4? And moreover, the chief of police said that his intent is to do widespread mass surveillance across Pasadena that is going to infringe on civil liberties and due process. And in the time when the federal government is literally disappearing people off the street for exercising civil liberties and being American citizens, what do you, Mr. Masuda, and city manager plan to ensure that there is community consent and that there isn't widespread surveillance here in Pasadena?
Why don't I start? So yeah, our police chief is in here and you're welcome to come in and if you have any other response. But certainly everything we do is public and transparent, and we have discussions at the city council about these issues. We also have a community police oversight commission, they call it the CPOC, and they they formed what's called a technology subcommittee or an ad hoc committee. I forgot what they're exactly calling it. And those issues are vetted there as well. But in policing generally, there have been advances in technology. And in Pasadena, we have looked at each of those technological improvements to see how they can help us better keep the community safe. And we have, again, those public processes that they all go through as the decisions are made, which ones to implement and where. So, we'll keep working at it to have those discussions, to go to the CPOC, to go to the city council. Of course, that's our duty as staff. And with respect to each individual technology and how it helps, that's not my area of expertise, but I welcome our representative from the police department if you'd like to say a few words on that.
I'm short, I'm gonna say. The license plate readers are really helpful in recovering stolen vehicles for the victims who want their car back. While I sat here in the last hour, we just recovered another one from a license plate reader, which is what you're talking about, right? These are, like city manager said, the advances in technology are amazing, and it's not to spy on people, it's to recover people's properties that have been stolen from them. So maybe you misunderstood it's not meant for surveillance, it's meant for recovery of that. And then for any dangerous vehicles that we might be looking for, usually it's kidnappings or an assault with a deadly weapon or some kind of domestic violence thing. We're looking for that license plate or that vehicle, and it's much easier if the technology is helping us do it, and we can recover that car or stop that vehicle much quicker than for us to just be driving around aimlessly looking for it.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify, the Police Oversight Commission ad hoc body is not a Brown Act body, so the public isn't able to participate in those conversations. And this acquisition of license plate readers in District 4 came before the Finance Committee and did not come before the Public Safety Committee. And again, this was not something that was discussed in advance with District 4. And this is part of the chief's stated bigger vision of installing a variety of technologies, not just license plate readers, but cameras, to develop a real-time crime center that widespread across the city would be mass surveillance and a large, huge infringement of our civil liberties that we did not participate in the conversation in advance and we are not consenting to. Thank you.
Hi, George Pazzarelli. Want to thank Councilmember Masuda for the announcement about the American Legion. I wear more than one hat. I also am an officer with the American Legion Post 280. I just wanted to add on that the Legion Post 280 will also host a blood drive on June 27 at the Legion Post 179 North Venado. And if you want to, what is Venado? Venado is the cross street with the Denny's that's on Colorado. That's Venado. And just up north, you'll find the Legion, lots of free parking. So blood drive from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on June 27. Next, I want to express another hat I wear. As I sit on the committee that puts together plans, et cetera, the Veteran Day observance, the Memorial Day observance, and the recent Vietnam Veteran Welcome Home observance, obviously long overdue. And want to express deepest, sincerest appreciation for the city's support for all of those. It's Parks and Rec staff it for us, and they put up with all our demands and requests, et cetera. And I'm proud to say that Pasadena is very well represented at these veterans events. So God bless all of you for your support. Veterans always need it. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Before you answer, Stacy, would you come up here, just in case we have a water and power question? Rich DeLivio from, who was the other person? I want to make sure. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, please, just in case.
Okay.
Say your question.
All right. It's no news to anybody that there have been a lot of economic uncertainties, tariffs and interest rates and so on. And so has the city planner had a chance to assess what the impact of those might be on some of these planned structures? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Well, we have, at the city, we have a separate department that we work closely with that does economic development. And so I know that's something that, you know, we're all following very closely. When we do our plans, we do, you know, there's an economic analysis that's incorporated as part of it, because we want to make sure that what we're proposing, you know, what the market would support, basically, for the short term and the long term. But if, you know, there's the economy changes or other things happen, you know, we're always constantly looking at our older plans as well to see if they need to be updated or refined as well. So we have done a series of updates to, for example, incentivize certain uses like research and development. With the office market being so soft over the past, half decade or so, we did an ordinance to allow or streamline the process to allow office to housing conversions. So there's different things that we're always looking at, and so as new information comes up, we're always trying to be on top of it.
And if I can quickly jump in, one thing we are looking at is whether or not we can waive or reduce or put in abeyance some of the fees for permits, because it's a tragedy what happened to folks, and where it makes sense, where we can do it, whether it's a deposit for I forgot what they call C&D, whatever that stands for. We are looking at that, and we're going to bring it to the what's called the EdTech, which is Economic Development Technology Subcommittee of the Council, on June 17th to see what, if anything, we could do with respect to either waiving, reducing, or eliminating permit fees.
Hi, Randy McKenzie. A question for, I guess it's a city planning question. First of all, before I go into the question, I just want to commend all of you that presented. You guys did a very fantastic job with presenting, and thank you, Councilman Masuda, for putting these on. My question for the city planning is, I saw in the projects, the Halster Street was an affordable housing multi-unit project. I was wondering, were there any plans to do more affordable housing multi-units, whether it be on some of the existing mixed-use ones like the Panda Inn, or some other ones that are in the near future for 2026, 2027?
Yes, we have, there's really, you could kind of divide up into two different projects. One would be where the project is like 100% affordable or majority affordable. So the Halstead project is one of those. There are a couple of others in the city as well that fall under that category. The other category is where it's, because we have an inclusionary housing ordinance, so a percentage of the housing is either built on, a percentage of the housing is affordable, and it's either built on site or they pay into a fund. So all the projects that have over 10 units or more would have some type of affordability component, either on site or they would pay into the fund. We've been averaging about 15% of total housing, between 15 to 20% of total housing that's constructed that's been affordable at some level. We are looking at the inclusionary housing ordinance and coming up with recommendations. We will be presenting it to the same committee the city manager had mentioned, the we call it EdTech, Economic Development and Technology Committee of the Council. So we'll be going to them shortly with some recommendations to further incentivize building affordable housing on site. But if maybe you can connect with me and I can give you a list of addresses, because, well, number one, I don't know them by heart, but I do have tables that show that.
My name's Steve Ballard, and I have a question about the water. Pacific Palisades ran out of water. I live in Lower Hastings, probably get our water from the reservoir up there. Does it have diesel backup to pump it?
That's a great question, and working closely with our fire department, thank you for that too. Fortunately, we did not have any reports of lost water during firefighting, so that's a very good thing for our community. As well, we were actually able to help other communities nearby with our water system during the fire, so that we're very proud that we were able to do that. We do pump water up to that area, but prior to the fires, prior to any emergencies, even with the wind event, as City Manager Marquez mentioned, we prepare. So we fill up all of our reservoirs prior to any emergency in order to be ready. So that's one thing that we did too. So you can see that our reservoirs were full and it remained to be available during firefighting. We also do pumps up within the city boundaries. So within our area right here, we do supply our own power, water and power. And our guys are out there front lines as well, making sure that you're putting restoring power immediately. So if any system was damaged through the fire, they were there within minutes, frankly, and restored power within hours. I think most of you realize that the maximum length of time that we're out of power within the city from this event was 2 days, and most of the events were within 2 hours, restored within 2 hours.
Rim Road, that was out for 5 or 6 days.
5 or 6 days, right. So then you have other parts. We also serve parts of Altadena, and that's served by Edison. And with there we have backup generators that we have readily available as well. But with that said, we still continue to harden our system. We're purchasing more backup generators, and we're also putting in some permanent generators as well.
Okay, and the second deal, the gate at the top of Calderwood and Rim Road, again, it's still welded up. We could have been trapped up there. What is being done to open that? The gate that goes into Field School.
Okay, I don't know if that's my area, but.
No, I'm sorry, it's not water and power.
So I am familiar with that issue. That's on school district property, and I just met with a group of people, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about that very issue, and I'm going to follow up with the school district and see if, we understand the need, but it is on their property, so we'll continue to work with the school district, and I owe a telephone call to the superintendent, but again, I just met with him. It was probably either Tuesday or Wednesday, because it was a short week because of Memorial Day, but more to come on that, and I'll keep pushing for them to reopen that gate.
All right, thank you.
We're going to have you three are the last questions, and then we'll go out to the audience and answer questions one-on-one, okay?
My name's Daryl Montez. We lost our home in the Hastings Ranch fire. And something was brought to my attention just now. You said the reservoir was full and actually pumping water that evening. Is that correct?
The reservoir in Hastings Ranch, correct.
Yeah, so that feeds our fire hydrants up in the Hastings Ranch area?
Yes.
So multiple entities of the fire department the following day said there was no water coming out of those fire hydrants that night.
No, there's no reports of lost pressure from those hydrants during the firefighting. In fact, we kept it full. We kept it at high levels the following weeks because we wanted to make sure it was available in case there was a reignition of any fires in the area.
Okay, interesting. Okay, my question is, and it was already answered regarding the permits, the waived permits, possibly. LA County, I know in the city of Los Angeles City, we're working with the mayor, and we hear a lot of that on the TV and news media, that they're going to try to waive those permits. We don't hear much coming from District 4 Pasadena. So I was just wondering if you could add some clarity to that.
Just to update that, yes, City of LA did do, the mayor had done an executive order on that. LA County did a motion to study it. And so I've actually been talking to my colleagues in LA County as far as what they're going to propose. They will be coming back actually to the supervisors within the next 2 weeks with recommendations. And we're going to go back to our council subcommittee later in June with recommendations as well.
Okay, and 2 more questions real quick. We've been working with architects on...
Excuse me, Alan, from you and the person behind you, you're going to have to ask your question one-on-one because we're only going to take the next 3.
Can I comment, though? You didn't give us a warning that this is going to...
Well, we just have a time element.
Why are you cutting off public comment?
Pardon me?
Why are you cutting off public comments when you call this a town hall meeting? I think every individual...
Okay, you're the last person then. Is that okay?
You cut them off.
Excuse me.
In advance, Gene?
Can you be the last person then?
You want me to?
Yes.
I'll be glad to.
All right, are you okay with that? Okay, thank you.
Has there been any discussion on the public utilities connection fees as we rebuild? Are those going to be waived or looked at to being waived as well, or is that going to be on the owner's responsibility? Do we know?
The portion I'm tasked with is to look at the permit fees, so it doesn't include the utility portion of it, but that's something I don't know if the city manager has anything to add on that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, but he was just telling me what it was. I'm not aware of Water and Power looking at those fees, but I can inquire with them. You know, we are, as you can see from the planning we've done through the planning department on permit fees, that we're seeing where we can provide and support to those who lost their homes. And so let me start by saying I'm so sorry you lost your home. And we are here to support you, and we're doing what we can.
No, thank you. And the last question is, any communications on undergrounding the power lines? Has there been any discussion on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. One thing I think you can be proud of your city, we are ahead of the game in this area. We have majority of our system underground, which you don't hear anywhere else, frankly. And beyond that, we also are continuing to work expeditiously to continue to underground, including in this area, 2 projects that we're looking at that actually is in construction right now. One at Canyon Close and the other one on Fox Ridge. And so the Canyon Close one, I think, started construction yesterday. Should be done by the end of June, and the other one starting in fall.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time.
I'm a short guy, so I got to adjust that. My name is Harish. Last name is too long, so I won't even mention it.
Closer, you can.
Closer? Okay. Hello, is this okay? Yeah. My name is Harish, and last name is too long, so I won't even mention it at all. But first of all, thank you to all you guys. You all have guts to work for a semi-government job. It's a thankless job, you know. And my wife retired as a math teacher with PUSD, so I know how much criticism she gets, you know. Anyway, I'll come to the point. My issue has been going on for more than 25 years plus. And the issue is revolving trash, fire hazards, and compliance. All the agencies in the city have been informed. The house behind me is full of trash, full of fire hazard, and a lot of departments have visited, but there's still no solution. How would you all feel for more than 25 years plus? You see this trash every day. Can you all solve it, please?
So here's what I would advise. If you can email me, I can give you my card after. From the fire department side, we can ensure that somebody goes out there, that if there's a compliance issue on the fire side, and if not, that we can connect with our partners at the building and planning department that are the code compliance. Some properties, depending on what is there, there's limits to what actually the city can enforce. But I assure you, if you email me the address, that we'll have somebody out within the week.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Dennis Capile. I live in the Victory Park neighborhood. And my question has to do with air quality. Since the fires, are there any concerns about air quality? I know some of the arsenic I've read have settled, and maybe when construction companies clean up, it gets stirred up. Is there any monitoring or any concern with that?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Actually, Caltech's been a leader in this arena, and they launched what they call an air quality sensor hub. And they have 28 different monitors that are high quality monitors detecting particulate matter 1, so it's 1 micron, so a very, very small dust, particulate matter 2.5, and particulate matter 10. And what we're looking at is any sign that the cleanup activities or any other activities in the community are generating the type of dust that we should be concerned about. The monitors themselves don't detect contaminants. What they detect is things in the air that are suspended in the air. But we've always seen that as a proxy for whether or not contaminants could potentially be airborne. And we're really glad to report, actually a little surprised that we're not seeing more contaminants, or more particulate matter in the air. Their data is actually published. It's on a website. It's called the Phoenix Network. And we actually have an air quality sensor on the top of the Pasadena Public Health Department roof. And so we're monitoring our sensor daily, but the website actually shows all 28 monitors. And so far, we might see a little blip every now and then in one particular sensor in a neighborhood, and that's probably due to someone obviously cleaning up their property, but then it really subsides after a couple hours. So that's a really good sign for the region. In addition, we launched 9 purple air sensors across northern Pasadena. And, after the wildfire, these purple air sensors are privately owned. People deploy them on their own property, and they report real-time data to a website that is accessible to everyone. And what we did at the city is we looked at gaps in northern Pasadena where maybe the air sensors purple air wasn't prevalent in that neighborhood. And then we deployed them at city facilities. And again, with the purple air network data, what we're seeing is that there isn't any difference between what we're seeing through purple air in Pasadena versus what we're seeing throughout the region in terms of just everyday smog and the types of things that we might encounter due to the weather and that kind of thing. So all of those are really positive signs that air quality has not been diminished by the cleanup activities.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hello, my name is Alan Shea. I'm a former resident of District 4. I've run for mayor, I've run for city council, and I know Gene very well. My question that I want to present certainly to Gene and to our city manager will be deferred first by me asking all of you who are still here, how many of your homes were burned down? So we have a few in here. The reason I ask that question is because Gene Masuda has indicated that District 4 had the biggest impact in Pasadena of homes that were burned down. We had the biggest fire crisis in LA County history, the Eaton Canyon fire. My question to you is, has there been a plan of action for those whose homes have been burned down and who do not want to go in debt by rebuilding their house? Has there been a plan of action identified, and those individuals who can seek your leadership to make sure they're not going to go into debt behind building a house? Because anything that's tied to damages on the legal side may be 4 to 5 years before you see that. And I'm sure none of us in this room want to tackle building a house that long. So share with the folks here what our plan of action is. Thank you.
Ellen, I think your question is, what can we do for the people that can afford to build their homes?
No, but it's your plan of action to make it happen so people are not in debt. What are the things? There's a very good deal. As a real estate broker, a lawyer, a business owner, someone who grew up here, PUSD, the number one thing I would say for anybody's investment is not to go into debt, especially if you're over 50 years old. Gene, if anyone in District 4 wants to build their house, they do not want to rely on going into debt, especially if their homes were paid off at this point. If there's no leadership by you and by the city of Pasadena to address that with the residents, they're going to continue to go through the trauma and the discouragement, and I'm going to be nice, the discouragement of lack of leadership. I'm asking you, what can you do, or what will you do to add some leadership to those concerns? And I'm sure everyone in this room have those concerns if you're going to talk about rebuilding your property.
Ellen, we all have that concern. And, we're doing whatever we can to help the people that have lost their homes. But right now, I don't understand what you think we can do at this point. But what you did say was correct. A person that is maybe a certain age that can't afford to rebuild their home, they would probably sell their lot. And that's what I see what's happening right now. So I wish I had a clearer answer for you, but that's what's happening. And anybody else have anything?
I did just want to add that there are a lot of new kind of innovative home types of construction too that can help reduce the cost, whether it's prefabbed or, manufactured homes. You can do what we would call like the accessory dwelling. You can construct that first before your home. So there are some things that can help kind of reduce the cost. But of course, it depends on what the gap is to begin with. But to reduce the cost, and then would be a point to start.
That's the very reason why I'm bringing this before District 4. This district is the heaviest hit. If you want to set the precedent and get things on the right path, it's going to come from your district because you hit the hardest. And your leader, whether it's Gene Masuda or if it's the manager of the city of Pasadena, and both of these gentlemen know me very well, is that a plan of action is always going to be your best rescue because this can go on for years. Trust me, it can go on for years. And our firm has evaluated the average time to recover from these things, 30 years.
Gene, Bill Mangum, and I would just like to address the previous speaker's question. There are many, many people who will not be able to rebuild. And your answer was not satisfactory, sir. I think what you need to do is go back and do some more homework and question and meet with the people extensively, not a few, extensively throughout your district and see what you can do. Then you could be in Washington as the head of the Los Angeles Council. The county council did 2 weeks ago, where she met with the president and she met with the current chairman of the Senate and also of the House of Representatives. I think there's much, much more that can be done. Now, the reason I'm here is that before the city council 2 months ago, I called for an investigation of the fire department by an independent commission. And in response to that, after my third request, the mayor advised us that he was going to get a report from the fire department. And to the fire department representative, if you do not know that answer, madam, I ask that you find out and that you advise your supervisor and you advise the public as to when you do expect to have that report. It has been 5 months since we had a fire in the city of Pasadena, the worst fire that has ever occurred in the history of the city. 23 years ago, we had another serious fire. We need to learn what has happened during this past fire occurrence and how can we avoid it in the future. And the only way that you're going to do that is to ask your citizens what has been their experience. Because in my district, up on the top of Hastings Ranch, where I lost my house, the first house that was one of the ones to burn completely, and it could and should not have happened. And there's a probability that at least half the homes in the top of Hastings Ranch could not have burned with proper fire support. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for attending today's meeting. We're going to come out to the audience, and you have any one-on-one questions, we'll be here to answer them, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.